Well, g'day guys and welcome to the podcast. This is Life in the Peloton and what a bonanza it's been the last few weeks. So much Tour de France going on. Whew, the dust is settling a little bit now. We're still a long way to go in the season. We've got the World Championships coming up. There's all gravel events starting as well. So lots of cycling going on. But let's get into the podcast this week. First and foremost, I want to say this podcast is being brought to you by our proud partner, Rapha. And I want to chat a little bit about Rapha before we kick off. A little bit about the Rapha Foundation, actually. It's an exciting project that was founded in 2019 with the mission of building a better future for cycling and cyclists. The Rapha Foundation now funds more than 20 organisations around the world committed to inspiring, empowering and supporting the next generation of riders and racers from underrepresented communities in the sport. To date, the organisation has provided over $5 million of funding to 29 guarantees around the world. Now, in 2023, USA Cycling launched Search for Speed, a talent identification program on a mission to make track cycling more accessible to diverse and underrepresented communities in Los Angeles. Supported by Rapha, the Search for Speed is designed to provide a pathway for young adults with the potential to enter the USA national team ahead of the 2028 LA Olympics. What an awesome idea. There's a film that Rapha captured that is being released today, so go across and check that out. That is an amazing project and a great pathway, and I'm so glad that Rapha have captured that and has made it into a little documentary for us to experience. Well, let's crack into this episode today. I've got for you Maghalie Rochette, a really exciting talent on Life in the Peloton. She was born in Canada. It seemed from the get-go, as soon as Maghalie took to the bike, she was so suited to the combination of bike handling, running, riding, all the skills you need in cyclocross, which is sort of weird. Not many people go straight to that. She soon became national champion, then she became Pan Am champion, and then she took out her first World Cup win. She loves all things off-road and can really handle herself on the mountain bike pretty well also. Because as you listen to this, she is actually bike packing with her husband over from Ireland to Glasgow for the World Championships, which are happening right this weekend, where she's going to be competing in the mountain bike marathon event and the e-mountain bike event as well. One of the other exciting things about Maghalie is, away from the bike, she also produces a very successful podcast called Fever Talk. If you haven't heard it, go across and have a listen because she's released a number of different series. But one of the most interesting, I think, courageous series she's done is her menstrual health series, where she openly discusses what some of the challenges are racing as a female around menstrual health. Now, in this episode, we're going to talk about her whole career, really, right from the beginning, right up until Glasgow right now, and touch on all that stuff that she has had to go on through, and also other female athletes, some of those challenges and hurdles they go through to perform at the top level. Now, you've heard me talk about AG1 this year as something I use every day. It's a part of my daily routine. And I'm wondering, actually, how many of you have gone out there and tried it? I'd love to hear from you. I'd love to hear your feedback, and are you enjoying AG1 as much as I do? I really do like it. I think I just like it because of the simpleness of it. It's a simple routine. It's really nice. It's the first thing I do when I get up in the morning with my kids at 6:30 a.m. I turn the coffee machine on, I grab my shaker, I put a scoop of AG1 in, a little bit of water, shake it up, and that's it. I've built a healthy daily habit in about 1 minute. It's really convenient. It's a daily, clean, green source of energy. And it actually really does taste okay too. You know, it doesn't sound like it's going to taste great, but it does. Believe me, it does taste nice. AG1 is the foundation of daily health, and that is really why I like it, because it's complete enough to be the all-in-one supplement for me, which all goes into improving my overall health. That's what it's all about, I guess. It's more than just greens. It's a comprehensive blend of vitamins and minerals, probiotics, superfood complexes. It helps provide digestive support, immunity support, metabolism, energy, and stress support too. It's just about for anyone, athletes, people like you and me, and everyone in between. It's also vegan, paleo, and keto friendly. If a comprehensive solution is what you need from your supplement routine, the Athletic Greens is giving you a 1 free year supply of vitamin D and 5 free travel packs with your first purchase. Head across to drinkag1.com/lifeinthepeloton. That's drinkag1.com/lifeinthepeloton and check it out. Now, if you didn't hear it last week, guys, I released a new series called The Race Communique. That is myself, Tom Southam, and Luke Durbridge discussing what happened in the Tour de France. That's actually not how it's always going to be. We're supposed to be discussing what happened in the last months of racing, but because the Tour de France essentially was the last months of the racing, and it was so good, we really wanted to just discuss that. That is the new series over at Life in the Peloton, well, where you find this podcast as well. Go and check it out. Let me know what you think. It's just a new idea. Maybe I'll launch that series next year, but I just wanted to test the waters with those guys because I do love chatting to those two guys. And I thought, well, hey, why don't we just make a podcast? And then we've got a reason to catch up every month. Now, guys, just before we get to the episode, I want to chat to you quickly about a new product I've been using made by Pillar. Now, Pillar is a sports micronutrition company started right here in Australia and developing products that intersect between pharmaceutical intervention and sports supplements for athletes. Now, the easiest way to describe that is electrolytes and carbohydrates. They're the products that you have when you're racing that are going to get you to the finish line. The role of Pillar Micronutrition is to help you to get to the start line, feeling your best over and over again. What I'm talking about is that's the recovery stuff. That's the stuff you use to get you to the start line before the race and after the race. Now, I've been using the triple magnesium and I've only been using it for the last week and it's actually changed my game for sleep. Well, how do I know? I can hear you asking, well, I'm not wearing a recovery or a sleep device these days, but I've got a 1-year-old and she is still waking up in the nights. Well, not for me now. I can tell you, I've been sleeping through, much to the disgust of my wife. But if you do wear sleep devices which track your HRV and sleep scores, you don't need to take my word for it because the scores will tell you it does work. It's really easy to drink. It tastes nice. I've been taking it with water in my shaker about 30 minutes before bed each night. If you want to try Pillar today, head across to pillarperformance.shop and use the code LITP for 15% off your first purchase. Or if you're a USA listener, head across to thefeed.com/pillar. Check it out, guys. This really is a no-brainer. Good sleep, good recovery. It's really simple with this triple magnesium and there's no tricks about it. But there's stacks of other stuff to check out while you're over there too. So that's pillarperformance.shop. Well, guys, I'm not going to hold you up any longer. I'm going to bring you the episode right now. So sit back and enjoy this great episode chatting with Maghalie Rochette. All right, here we are, Maghalie Rochette. We're here on the podcast. A pleasure to have you on the podcast. Thanks for joining me tonight. Well, not tonight for you.
Yeah, it's morning for me, but yeah, thanks to you. I mean, it's I've listened to your podcast before, so it's nice to meet you, and I'm happy to be doing this. So thanks for asking me to be on.
I don't know when you started your own podcast because you've got a fantastic podcast yourself, Fever Talk. It's something that I did podcasting because I like just talking to people and I like talking to them in person. And obviously the evolution of podcasting, and I know everyone was talking online before I started doing it, but with the whole pandemic, it sort of made us go online and be able to talk to anyone when we want. It's a great thing because you and I are talking, you're over in Canada, I'm here in Australia, and we're connecting. But I do miss, and I really do wish we could have recorded this in person, but we've sort of got the next best thing. How are you sort of going recording your podcasts online? Do you enjoy that or do you like doing it in person?
I mean, I like kind of same to you, I think. Like, I really love doing it in person. I think it adds, a better dynamic. I mean, I just love doing it in person, but I do enjoy doing it. I'm happy that we get the opportunity to meet with so many different people online. Like, to be honest with you, if it wasn't for these online platforms, I probably would have done just half the episodes I've done, So it's really cool way to meet people. And for me, that's actually why I wanted to start the podcast. I'm just a curious person and I love meeting people. And I think I've been able to meet some really cool people through the podcast that ended up becoming friends, which to me, that's the coolest part, like they're just people that I admired. And then you get a chance to talk to them for an hour or so and suddenly they become friends, and then when you're in the same part of the planet again, then you can hang out for real. So I think that's kind of why I did it initially, and it's become really, really fun.
Well, let's talk about you then, because it's nice to turn the mic on a fellow podcaster. I know what it's like being on the other side. You're like, oh, this is great. I just get to sit back and just relax. I don't have to worry about what we're talking about. And you just get to talk about yourself for a moment, which what I want to talk to you about, and I want to go right back to the beginning. I know it's a stereotypical question, and you've probably answered it a million times, but I haven't heard the story. I want you to take us through the journey, how you started cycling, really, right in the beginning, because you followed a little bit of a different trajectory to, say, like myself and a lot of people who listen to my podcast. It's more about road cycling. You're off-road, cyclocross, but also mountain bike. Take us back right to the beginning, because Canada isn't really known for their cycling. More, I'm going to be stereotypical here, ice hockey, or hockey as you like to call it. Tell me, how did you get on a bike?
Yeah, I mean, my dad, so when I was a small girl, I was pretty tomboy. Like I liked things that were different. So I was skateboarding and like playing basketball, or like all these different, these sports that were maybe not as many women in it. And my dad was mountain biking. And I just remember I was probably like 7, and I was seeing him coming back from mountain bike rides, and he was fully muddy. And I was like, oh my God, like this is what I want. Like, can you take me? And so my dad took me, and I just thought it was such a cool thing because, for one, like I think back then I didn't really know anyone anyone else that was mountain biking, in school. So I thought, for me, like I was like, oh, this is like my thing that makes me different. And I just loved how, my dad was like always, I mean, it's because I wanted to, but he was like challenging me with like, oh, do you think you can like go down this hill? And I'm like, oh yeah, like I'm gonna try. But I loved that it was really pushing me to do things that scared me, and I kind of liked it. And it was also like kind of that moment with my dad, which I appreciated. So that's kind of how it started. And then I started doing a little bit of mountain bike races, like the local races. At the same time, I also got into triathlon. So anyway, like through my teen years, I was doing both mountain biking and triathlon, eventually going more into triathlon. And at like 19 years old, I got injured. I kept getting injured. I kept breaking my foot from running. And so I mean, I had like at one triathlon practice, I stepped on a piece of glass and it kind of torn my fascia under the foot. And from that point on, like it would never, like I kept having stress fractures. So I couldn't run as much as I wanted. And at that point, I was like 18, 19 and trying to be on the national team of triathlon. So it just became frustrating. So at that point, I kind of stepped away from high level sports for a year, and that's when I kind of got back into cycling and mountain biking, because I had stopped for the last few years just to kind of pursue more triathlon. But getting more into like just riding was really fun for me. And I was like, oh, actually, like I kind of really like it. And so I just did more and more. And I actually did road nationals, which was my first kind of big race back. And I got 5th in the elite, and I was still just 19. So I was like, oh, like I'm okay at it. And so yeah, that's kind of how I got back into it. And then a friend of mine called me and she's like, hey, there's this thing, there's a cyclocross race in the neighborhood, like this weekend, you should come try it. I think you're gonna like it. So I'm like,
did you know what cyclocross even was?
No, but I was like, she told me about it, and I was like, oh, I'll look it up. And back then, I don't know if you know Jeremy Powers.
I do, yeah.
So Jeremy had this series called Behind the Barriers. So like once she talked to me about it, I kind of looked at that and I saw like the cool vibe of cyclocross. I'm like, huh. So I tried. I bought a bike, like a pretty cheap $600 bike, went to the race, and I just loved it. I loved that it was like super dynamic. There was some technical aspect, but also very tactical and just really intense and short. And from that point on, I was just like kind of hooked. And I started doing more and more, and then more mountain biking. And then I got on the national team of mountain biking, signed my first pro contract, and then was mixing both cross and mountain bike, and now here we are. So it happened quickly once I committed. It happened quickly because I think I had this background of just doing sports really my whole life. Triathlon, you're still fit even if it's not bike specific, just bike specific. So it kind of came quickly because of that background, and yeah, I just loved it, really.
I guess there's especially one point there. You mentioned that when you got injured, you were sort of around 18 years old. That, for me, often you see it now with a lot of people coming through in different sports, that's the pinnacle point where they go, you know what, sport, going out, hanging with my friends, drinking, hitting the clubs, this sort of thing, especially in Australia, because that's what you can do at 18 years old, and that can be sometimes that point where you see a lot of good athletes sort of drift away from it, more naturally talented, and the ones who really want to work at it. But for you, you had a break right in that moment, and that was actually something that drew you back. Can you remember back to that time?
Yeah.
And being sort of not even interested in that, or maybe even wanting to get more into it, or what happened in that break?
I mean, that's actually a really good, and I kind of brushed over it, but it actually was a key moment for me. Like, I wasn't in the best, it was tough for me, like having that injury at that time. I had been considering myself an athlete my whole life, that's kind of all I had done. And so just kind of stepping away from it for a while, I was kind of searching myself a little bit. I wasn't sure. So that summer, I actually, it was the first summer that I didn't race much. Like, went camping with my boyfriend and with my friends, and I was still active because I loved it, but never in my head, like, I wasn't really into competing. And so I did some adventure races and all bunch of things. And I think stepping away from it for that whole summer ended up being beneficial, because then I kind of realized that I missed it, because you can drink also at 18 in Canada. So like, okay. I kind of got, a little bit into it, but not that much. And I realized, well, I don't think that's for me. Like, I really do love competing and I kind of miss it. And I realized that what I wanted to do was go train with some of my friends. So maybe it was less structured. I remember we were doing, I had two of my friends that we were kind of sometimes riding together. And what we would do, we would go on Mount Royal. So where you have the Montreal Pro Tour. So like that climb.
Oh, yeah.
And we would do like training on that and finish by eating like kind of a luxurious hot dog that they have in Montreal. Anyway, like it was... I was still really into it, although maybe not as structured or as intense. I was like, well, I actually really love that. And so that kind of naturally got me back into having some goals. And yeah, then that's when I decided to sign up for the road nationals. And that kind of changed it, because I'm like, oh, I haven't really been doing it seriously yet. I'm still like, okay, I'm like fifth in the country at this race. So I was like, oh, okay, like maybe I should actually get back into it. I really do love it. So looking back, I think you're right. Like I did step away, and it could have been that thing that just take me out of the sport. But I really do think that it made me kind of
want it more.
Want it more. And also, like, I think, when you do it, like since you're a kid, maybe you're like, it's just something that you do because you've always done it. But when you step back away from it, then coming back is a conscious decision. And then you're 19 years old, and it's actually you deciding, no, this is what I want to do, and this is how I'm going to do it. So I think there was this shift that, just made it more important for me, maybe.
It's funny how you look at that now in perspective and looking back on it, and it's like almost like it was meant to happen that way in fate. You're like, if I hadn't got that injury, maybe I would have pushed on for a couple more years and burnt out,
Yeah.
But that break at the right time, and I always say this about little crashes and injuries that I've had along the way. You can look at it two ways. And when I have these crashes in pinnacle part of my career, especially one specific crash, it got me that chance to reset and take me out of the bubble. Like you said, I was just going through the motions. Got me a chance to go, do I really love this still? And then I could make the conscious decision, as you did. Yeah, I do. And I want to do this. And then I went on, opposed to just sort of pushing through 1 or 2 more years.
Yeah. Just to jump on that, what you said, like, I think it's so well said. I also think, like, sometimes, so I just had an injury now, like from the last 3-4 months. And I realize it's really the first time in the 10 year I've been doing this professionally that I'm having this kind of forced break. But I think it's a good thing. Like, otherwise you never really stop. Like, maybe you have like 3 weeks at the end of the season, but you never really have a time to actually stop. And so this was kind of forced upon me. And at first I thought like, oh, well, this sucks. But I think, as you said, like looking back now at the last 2-3 months that I've been kind of forced to rest, I think it's a really good reset. And now I'm like, okay, well, now I'm really ready to go. So I do think you're right. Like, sometimes those things are opportunities rather than obstacles. Just depends on how you look at it, I guess.
Totally. It's the way you look at it, and it's very easy to say right now, but let's talk about it because like you said, it probably could set you up for a very good cyclocross season, which is in the wintertime at the end of the year when, road cyclists are having their time off. But for you, that's game on. So you having some time off now could potentially set you up for the cross season, which is what I want to talk about because you're probably most notably known for your cyclocross skills. And as you said, you fell in love with it in the beginning. I don't know whether this is true or not, but I sort of see it as like you started sort of mountain biking with your dad, then you did some road cycling. It's like the nice, happy medium. Is that how you sort of see it?
Yeah, maybe a little bit because it does, sometimes I still do mountain biking and I love it. I love mountain bike riding and the racing is fun too. But for me, the racing is less tactical. In mountain biking, it often happens that you're kind of riding, everyone's kind of alone. But cyclocross has this aspect that comes from road maybe where there's a lot of tactics involved. There's like Peloton riding, maybe not as much as the road, but still like there's this dynamic that adds kind of a component of complexity, which I really enjoy. So yeah, I do think it's a little bit a mix of both, and it's shorter. Like we race 50 to 55 minutes and I really love how intense it gets. Like there's no dull moment in those 55 minutes. And to me, that's exciting. So yeah, I think you're right. It's probably like kind of the mix of both.
Well, you told me about Jeremy Powers. Now, just because we didn't sort of explain him to the listeners, but he's sort of the GOAT of cyclocross in the US, and he went across and, did very well in the motherland in Belgium and Holland as well. And that's ultimately where eventually you went. I guess you started racing in, the US and Canada, but then, I think it's the same with road cycling in Australia. If you want to do anything in road cycling, you've got to go to Europe. And of course, with cyclocross, that's where you've got to go. Tell me about that jump over for you, because from what I understand, you've sort of created cyclocross is a little bit different from what I understand, to road cycling in terms of there are a couple of big teams, but most of the people who go across, they've got their own little mini teams, and you've created your own little mini team with your husband and I think with your dog, and you go across there. That jump is something that we have to experience, as Australians, Kiwis, Canadians as well. You got to make that jump to Europe. It's not as easy as everyone thinks. Tell me a little bit about going across. I don't know what it's like for the cross season. Is it like really intense? Is it intimidating? What is it like coming into that scene?
Yeah. I mean, the first few times that I've been to Europe, I was on an actual team. So I was, the first 5 years of my pro career, I was racing for the Cliff Bar team. So it was like a full woman off-road team. And so we would go sometimes to, it was mainly mountain biking, but I did go across with them for cyclocross a few times. So that's when I kind of knew a little bit what it was all about. And back then it was intimidating just because the style of racing is different. But at the same time, I didn't really see it because I was in this team environment, which made all the logistics around pretty easy. But then 5 years ago, my husband and I did start our own team. So it's just me. I'm the only rider and he does basically everything else. And this is this is when we realize like how much of a challenge it is, because cyclocross is a pretty heavy, it's intensive on, equipment and all of that and logistics. And so if you're alone, sometimes it can be tough. And I think it takes, one of the things that's intimidating is it takes a while to be accepted, quote unquote, by the other riders and the other staff and like kind of that core European cyclocross community. At first, I remember one time, like it's the first time we spent, like we've packed our things and flew there with 11 sets of wheels and like all these bikes and stuff. And we were renting a little car. And it's the first time we went there for like 3.5 months. And I remember one of the first races, like after maybe a few weeks that we're there, like not many people are talking to me. And then we're just like waiting to get on course. And I'm like, all the racers are there. And I know they know who I am and I know who they are. So I'm like, oh, well, this is my chance to make friends. So I'm like, hey, everyone.
Not on the start line?
Well, no, just before the pre-ride. So like just before we get on course to look at what the course looks like. So it's like, maybe 2 hours before the race. So it's not a stressful moment. So I thought, I'll make friends here. And so I just said like, hey, everyone. And everyone looked at me, didn't say anything, and started chatting together again. So I was like this is so mean.
The ultimate rejection.
Oh my God. It was totally that. maybe like one or two people were talking to me, but it was pretty harsh. And I'm a very sociable person. Like in the US, you know, everyone's my friends. And I thought that was like, to me, that was hard. And I was like, oh my God. And it's just like, there's all these obstacles that, you know, in Belgium, and I don't know if this is the same on the road, but for example, like all the same races come back year after year. So if you want to, you have to go get your number, but it's not written anywhere where the numbers are. They're just in the same building they've always been to. But if you don't know, like I would spend hours like trying to find the freaking numbers, and then like there's no toilet. So, and I used to not have a camper. So like all these things, like you can't go to the, like all these things that you think.
Little things.
Oh my God. Yeah. Little things that are so normally like you just, you know, you take for granted in a US race, but they're so different. So it took a few years, but eventually like people started really respecting us and accepting that now we're part of this community, and now everyone's so nice with us. Like people are helping us out. Like they know that we're just a team of two. So if oftentimes like a mechanic from my competitor will catch the bike for me while my husband's giving it to me. So like now a lot of people are helping us out, and a lot of people are my friends too. Like I have dinners sometimes with some of my competitors, and it's just so fun now and so cool to be part of this, but it took a long time.
Well, that's the thing. Like, I guess that's something that I guess it's easy to say now when you're sort of in it. I really do like that element of Europe that you've sort of got to earn your stripes, and they've got to work out who you are, and they maybe needed to see you race not only for the first season to see how well you went, but then to come back, because you could have just been sort of a, you know, fly, dash in, dash out, you know, who knows who that was. But you came back, you went in and you earned your stripes again. Hey, I'm here to stay. I'm coming back. I'm going to get my head kicked in one week, but I'm going to be right back here next week. I'm going to win the week after. I'm not going away. And that's probably what sort of they went, all right, she's one of us now, you know. And I sort of like that old school way, which I feel like because of the way the world's sort of evolving and technology and things like that, that old school sort of find out yourself and work it out and, you know, listen to that guy and talk to that guy over there and get your number from that shop. That's sort of drifting away from road cycling especially. And it's something that I do miss, because I think it's a part of especially road cycling, growing up and learning, you know, the skill and mastering the art.
I agree.
And I like to hear that it is sort of like that still in cyclocross.
Yeah.
Do you think it still is like that?
I do think it's still like that, yeah. And I agree with you that, like, looking back, I appreciate it because it makes it so much better now. And it makes it that, I mean, I think, like, ultimately that's experience, you know, too. Like, there's the race craft experience that you gain and that you learn as you grow up as a racer. But also all of these things are part of gaining experience. And it's a beauty of the sport, too, like getting to know people and making connection, which makes everything easier year after year and week after week as you go back. So I think that's, you know, I think when you step away, like one day I'll step away from it and I'll remember those things, and they will be those things and those people that have come along and helped us along the way. And I think those things are some of the most beautiful memories, maybe more so than the actual race that, you know, some of them will like stay in my mind forever, but some of them are just like, you know, I kind of don't remember. They kind of all, you know, they all look the same in my mind. So I think that's definitely something that's important to learn, and that I'm grateful that we have learned for sure. And I do think it's still the same for the young ones coming up right now.
Well, as we're talking right now, the Tour de France Femmes is on. I'm talking about the road now. It's a big step for female racing. And it's a question that I want to ask you is, you know, into the cyclocross scene, and I don't know exactly sort of the progression of the female scene in cyclocross and what the level it was before and how much it's raised through. But definitely on the road, we've seen this big push, which has been fantastic to see the level of female, not only the level of racing, but I'm actually talking about the level of racing in the race. And I've been enjoying watching the racing progress and how much more professional the races have been getting and how much more interesting for me to watch them. What I want to ask you is, what are the challenges that you've gone through yourself as racing as a female, not only a cyclist, but a female athlete? You know, there's different levels of that question I want to sort of ask you is, you know, the lack of coverage, TV coverage, the recognition socially, but also that performance issues that you have to go through to perform as an athlete, that you need to be at a certain level, that you need to push your body to achieve. But you know that yourself, is this the right thing I'm doing for myself? What are some of these challenges that you've gone through yourself on all those sort of levels over your career?
Yeah. So I guess like, first of all, similar to, well, first, I mean, I love also watching the Tour de France fam. Like it's awesome, and it kind of makes me dream that, well, maybe one day I should like try to go, but it looks really cool and it's really fun for me to see that. I think in cyclocross, we've been a little ahead of the curve in terms of equality in the sport. And, that's thanks to women that came before me and fought for it. So I've always said, like, I feel lucky to be racing now. And I think like the generation that's a little younger than me are even luckier, because like the sport is just in such a even better place. But I still consider myself lucky, because it wasn't long after I came onto the sport that the sport became televised in the women races as well. And then since 2020, we have equal prize money at all the World Cups. And it was before that, we had it all at the other UCI events. So I think on the off-road side of things, we've been a little bit ahead of the road in that sense, if you watch like any cyclocross World Cup or any race, there's equal coverage for both the women and the men. But it wasn't like that before. Like the people that their generation before me used to not be televised. The women's race was before the junior early in the morning, so no spectators, nothing. So it did change a lot, and I'm grateful for the people that fought for that.
Do you know why they were ahead of the curve in the off-road scene, and why? What were the sort of who are the people that sort of try to push this forward, faster than say what we saw on the road?
I know that one of the women who fought for it is Helen Wyman, and I think one of the things that made it maybe easier is that the men and women races are the same. So we're, let's say we're at the Namur World Cup in Belgium. Well, we're all racing the same course on the same day, 2-hour difference. So it's very like all the cameras are already there. Everything is already there for the men's race. So why not also show the women's race, And I think that's maybe a difference, that on the road, like the races, the calendars are just completely different and you don't race at the same time. And also I think that made it maybe quicker to come. And I know that one of the first things that Helen fought for was the TV thing, because she said, well, if the sport is shown, then people are going to want to pay for it, more. So that like she fought for this first, and then eventually the prize money came. But yeah, I think it's just because we have the same races that made it.
Do you know the viewing, what are the viewings like, in comparison to men and women? Is it the same now? Or was it less before? Or is it, as soon as it became on TV, people were like, I'm on board, this is just good racing to watch? Or it took a while to come up the same?
I think now it's fairly the same, but I can't tell you how long it took to get to that level. But one of the thing is, I think, I wish I could tell you, but I just don't want to like invent numbers, so I can't.
Well, no, the reason why I asked, sorry to interrupt, is because it's for me, Paris-Roubaix, as soon as they televised the women's Paris-Roubaix, well, from the first edition, the day before Roubaix, I love that it was just had its own day. Yeah. And it wasn't just sort of wedged in after, the race, the men's race, or wedged in before, or, because you've just watched, the men's edition, just say you always tune into that. And then to watch a little bit of extra racing at the end, it just sort of took it away. And for me, as just an athlete, I was just glued to watching the women's race before my race, because I was G'd for Roubaix. Yeah. And now this year, and last year not being a rider, I was like, this is a whole weekend of Roubaix. So for me, it was fantastic. And for me, I couldn't see any reason why you wouldn't watch it. The women's race was just as exciting for me as the men's, because they had each had a day. And I was just wondering, when it comes to cyclocross, I just imagine it would sort of be the same feel.
Yeah, they're pretty similar. I know now they're pretty similar to viewing. Sometimes the women's higher, sometimes the men's higher, but it's very similar. But I think one of you were talking about how the level rose. Like it really did had the same effect in cyclocross, where the field are deeper, they're bigger, and it's faster. So that's been really cool because it makes for really exciting races. There's more people that can win because, there's more stronger people. So depending on the course and who's favored depending on their skills, like, so it makes really exciting races, and it forced all of us to reach a higher level, which is exciting. So yeah, I mean, it's been great. And I'm sorry, but I forget what was the question. You were asking about challenges that we might have, right?
Yeah, just some of the personal challenges yourself, with things that when you stepped into it, and we've spoken a bit, I guess, a bit more on the global sort of sense, or the view from the outside. But as yourself, the personal sort of challenges you had and coming through the sport, I guess, things that you noticed yourself that have changed, but also little hurdles that you've got over yourself.
Well, one of the things that I remember like very clearly, so one of the first World Cups I did, so that must have been like 2014 or something like that in cyclocross. And I traveled with one of my friends who's a male, and I got 9th at the World Cup. And he got 46th and in the men's race. And for getting 9th, I think I got like $150 and for prize money. And he got 600 euros, I think, for getting 46th. And I was like, oh my God. What? Like this, I couldn't believe it. But at the same time, like, it's so cool that just a few years later, now we're fully equal. And I think, as I said, that rose the level, but also, it allows us to do it full time. It allows other younger athletes to dream that they can make cycling their job, and not have to worry about another income. So like there's been so many positive changes that, as I said, I just feel lucky to be racing in this day and age. So that's been fun. I mean, I think you were talking too about like challenges in terms of maybe you were talking about menstrual cycle, where is it the right thing? Like we have to be fit and lean and all that. But at the same time, if we're like heading too much in that performance direction, well, then maybe we lose our period. And then you kind of wonder like, okay, well, am I, destructing this? Is it?
It's very easy to compare men and women, but clearly, when it comes to the racing and, when we're talking about wages and the differences, things like that, sure, we can do the direct comparison. But when we're talking about two different athletes here altogether, and this is something that I obviously don't know exactly, but I have an idea that we're built differently, yet we're treated the same. And when it comes to performing something that I naturally do, is from the pressures of my team or from my coaches, I need to meet this standard. I need to be a certain weight. I need to do a certain amount of load training. I need to have it's what I think is the correct diet for, to push the level of myself. And ultimately, sometimes it is unhealthy what I do as a male athlete. And I guess the question I want to ask you is, I'm trying to understand this a bit more. I've got 3 kids now, and talking to my wife a bit about what she went through with our kids is just, I can't imagine trying to put the pressure on my body when yet I'm a female, and I'm trying to also, I've got a reproductive system that needs to have a healthy body. And I'm wondering, the question what I'm asking is, I'm wondering, how do you combine the two? It's a question I've sort of always asked myself as a female athlete. There probably comes that choice, do I want to keep racing or competing, or do I want to have kids? It's a decision we don't have to make as males.
Yeah.
So I guess it's that combination, and it's an area I don't know about. It's why I pretty much want to ask you the question, how do those challenges go? I
think there's a few things here that kind of popped up, and it's super interesting. So thanks for bringing it up. First thing is like, yes, I think, and I think like this needs to be clear, like men and women are different. And sometimes like people will be comparing the men and the women's races, but I think they both have their appeal, like, yes, male sport, and I admire it too. Like sometimes you'll watch like a road or a cyclocross race, and the amount of power, and sometimes that translates in like technical ability that, male are so powerful that they're able to like jump over a rock that we might not be able to. So there's something really appealing and really cool to watch there. But I just don't think we can compare men and women's sport on like a similar, like you can't compare with the same variables. Like women have something different. So yes, maybe we're not as powerful and we can't jump over this huge rock or anything, but maybe the race is more tactical. Or maybe, yesterday in the Tour, like there was this big, like a long day breakaway. And at the end of the day, like the two girls that got caught up, like they're like, oh man, like this was cool. But there's like a cool camaraderie in the women's races too that's like special to watch and that can share really cool values. But as I said, like the tactical, like there's more people on the same level, so like it just is a different. And I think we need to compare it with different variables. Like of course we're never going to be like as powerful as the men, but that's okay. Now when it comes to like making that decision, like that we were talking about, I think we're the same, like we're still type A people if you're like professional athletes. So we want to like perform to our best. And so I'll speak for myself. Like I also want to be like as athletic as I can and like perform as the best as I can. So I've tried, like being super lean and saying, and I still think about it. Like I know that I'm not going to be as fast as if I'm 20 pounds over, heavier. Like I'm just clearly not going to climb as fast. But then in the recent years, like I've tried to, I lost my period for a while just because I was too, not really focusing on it. I just thought, well, this is kind of a burden anyway. Like it kind of sucks to have your period. You kind of feel like shit for a week and a month, and it's like this was not something that I wanted to deal with anyway.
Is this a common thing for female athletes to go through this?
Well, I think so. I mean, it's just like, to be honest, as a young girl, when I first lost my period, I was kind of proud of it because I thought that meant I was like a serious athlete, and then I kind of stopped thinking about it because it wasn't really coming back except the 1 month in the year where I was in the off season. But then at some point, like there started being more people talking about it, and I realized, well, maybe it's something.
This isn't right.
Well, yeah, maybe this isn't right, or maybe this is something I should at least get to know, and get to understand. And so what I was hearing was, well, if you don't have your period, maybe you just don't have it's because your body doesn't have the energy necessary to have this reproductive system active. So then I started thinking, well, if it doesn't have the energy for that, does it have the energy it takes to like perform at the highest level?
Yeah.
So it's like this give or take that I started to wonder about. And that's why I made this like podcast series that you were talking about. And I asked professionals to start to understand. And then I tested on myself. And I think now I have my periods back. And I think you can kind of be more powerful if you give your body the energy that it needs, and maybe that means I'm like a few pounds heavier. It doesn't mean I have to be 20 pounds heavier, maybe and sometimes it's not necessarily about weight. Like I'm still thinking in my head, like when it's time to race, I want to hit I don't actually have a number, but I want to feel lean enough that I'm light and that I can climb fast and feel like I'm an athlete. I still have that. But at the same time, if I just pay attention to how I nourish my body, and sometimes it's a timing thing, or it's just adding a bit more carbs, or just being conscious of that, I'm still able to have my periods, and I think ultimately it makes me more powerful. So I don't know if that like makes sense or responsive to the question, but I guess it is a challenge that maybe you face.
Well, I'm just sort of hearing out of all this is that the reproductive system is, the body is telling you having a period is when the body is ready to reproduce, to make a baby. It's telling you, I'm healthy, I'm ready, I've got enough sort of support here, and that's the natural process of your body. But maybe when it stops, and I'm certainly just hearing what you're saying, it's like, hey, I'm in sort of defense mechanism now. I can't even think about, making a baby, or, I'm not ready for that. So it's not in a healthy state. So like what you're saying there, let's get ourselves back to a healthy state, which what you said before, it's an inconvenience. So you don't want to do that. But actually, I need to be the best of myself to not only reproduce, but to be an athlete. I need to be the strongest version of myself. And that is, from what I can hear you saying, it's understanding how to eat well, your diet, it's not necessarily going down to, McDonald's and just stuffing your face and, eating any old food. It's about eating the right food at the right time. So is this process of understanding your reproductive system actually made you a better athlete because you're understanding how to fuel yourself better?
Yeah, I mean, I do think so. I think you recover better and then you're ready for the next session. And in my mind, I still struggle with it sometimes because, you said it earlier, like being a professional athlete and trying to be the best in the world, it's not always balanced. And at some point in the season, it's not always the healthiest thing. But if you want to be the best, like I still struggle with that, because I still want that. But I think the two can be together. Maybe for 9 months of the year, you can just, I don't know what I think. It's tough, but sometimes like in the race season nowadays, even though I have my periods all year, sometimes in the race season when I'm traveling more and maybe a little bit more stress and just like at the fittest that I'm ever going to be, well, sometimes I skip a month. But for me, that's kind of the sacrifice that I'm making. I'm like, well, it doesn't mean that I'm unhealthy if I miss one period. Like for me, that's something that I'm comfortable with. And I think everyone's comfort level is different. But for me, that's kind of where I've kind of, if it happens naturally, and once in a while I lose it because, there's more stress, I'm like, okay with that. And I don't think it means that I'm harming my body or that I will not be able to have a baby or anything like that. Yeah, it's kind of something that you kind of balance but I really do try to always make sure that what I've learned in terms of nutrition and recovery and all that, I always try to make sure that even in the highest period of racing that I keep that and that I eat enough and that I give my body what it needs. I think that's the basic of all of it. And then you just give your body what it needs to perform and recover and get stronger. And then, you kind of hope that it's enough. But
what about on two levels then, physically and psychologically? Can you sort of weigh up how you feel performance-wise? Because I'm not going to push you either way. I'll let you answer that question before I put my opinion in. But what can you feel physically? What's your opinion? Are you psychologically and physically, how do you feel either way now? Now you've sort of come back and understood and you feel like you're treating your body more respectfully now?
I think I'm more powerful. Like if I just look at power numbers, like they're higher and my weight is really not much bigger. Like I think I allowed my body to kind of become a woman body and not just a girl's body, if that makes sense. So yeah, maybe it comes with a little bit more, maybe I'm a little bit heavier, but there's a lot of muscles there and the muscles, like I can use them, So I think ultimately I'm more powerful, ultimately less prone to injury too, because like your body is healthier, your bones are healthier, all of that. So I think ultimately it was worth it to go through this process, I think, and learn all about it. And I think from day to day too, like kind of big day after big day, I can do more, So if you can do more, well, ultimately you'll get better, So I think it was worth it. And, I was talking about these stress fractures that I kept having when I was younger. I think it's related to that too. Like, I think I was just maybe not giving my body what it needed for everything that I was asking from it. And so, it just can't hold. Yeah, that's also part of performing. Like if you don't get injured, you're more consistent. And if you're more consistent, then ultimately you perform better. So I do think ultimately it was a good thing to do.
Yeah, well, because what I was going to say is I think I could imagine myself. How could I ever imagine? But, I can imagine that psychologically, that would probably be the biggest boost for me. I would just know wholeheartedly that I'm doing what is right for me and this is my decision. And that would be more powerful than any other sort of benefit I would get for being 1 kilo lighter or more fueled or whatever it is. Just the mindset, knowing that I'm treating myself right. What I wanted to ask is, what are the roll-on effects if you keep going down this road, for a female? Because it is different to a male. When you talked about bone density there, it's quite detrimental early in your life as a female. If you've got low energy availability and you're not treating your body right in those early years, bone density is a big sort of, byproduct of this. Because, what are some of the fallout effects if you don't sort of listen to these signs?
To be honest, I don't know. Like, I'm not, as much as I've tried to learn about it, like, I'm still not a doctor or like a professional about it. So I don't know. And I'm happy I don't, I guess, because it means I didn't get to a point where it was like so bad. But I think, to go back to your point, yes, I think psychologically it does help too. And, that's an interesting thing where I think it's different for everyone and different for even the same person at a different stage in their career. Like, there used to be times where what fueled me mentally, like what motivated me was, paying attention to all these tiny little details that, maybe I can be like 1% here if I drink this vegetable juice or if I do like this thing but now I'm like in a point where I guess what I'm trying to say, these little details, they can take a lot of mental energy, sometimes.
Yeah.
And it can be draining. Now I'm at a point where what fuels me and what makes me, like, I just want to be happy. And to me, that's like, okay, if I do the basics really well, like I do my training really well, I eat well, when it's a good time, I sleep well, I recover well. But my friends are going out for ice cream, I also go because this makes me so, like, it gives me energy, it makes me happy. And then when it's the time in training to like do that one last rep or like to do an extra sprint or do an extra thing, you have that willpower, whereas if you've used that willpower to do all these tiny details that maybe don't make a difference, but that, that kind of suck energy out of you, maybe you don't have that willpower to go on the extra attack in the race or to do all the, so I don't know, like, I'm not saying like this is the way to do it, but for me right now, I feel like this is the way that makes me the better version of myself, if that makes sense.
With all these extra social pressures, and I had it myself, and the coach is saying this, and the team is saying this, and how did you have the clear mind to go, okay, no, actually, I need to really sort of work this out. I need to talk to someone. I need to learn about this. And I guess on the back of that, what are you passing on? I know obviously you've got the podcast, which is perfect, but I mean, how are you passing this on aside from, vocally on the podcast?
I think the first thing is like, well, ultimately, like as an athlete, like, yes, there's all this team around you, but ultimately you're the master of your own ship, if that makes sense, I think. And this is very, I think it's empowering to make your own decision and to choose the path that you want to take. Maybe as a younger athlete, like it gives you confidence to follow what everyone else is telling you. But ultimately, and I'm sure you've gone through this too, like ultimately you grow up and you get to know yourself and you're like, well, you know what? I know what I need to perform. Like, I know what will make me the best athlete. And yes, like, I still need help. Like, I need help in knowing, like, exactly what training or, like, how do we plan these things, like, logistically to peak at the right time. Like, this, I need help. But ultimately, I'm the one who knows what will make me the happiest and what will make me, the strongest. And I think
having the confidence though to do that, it takes time. Like early in your career, and I can just imagine this. It's just like, well, I just need to do this. I need to train, fasted, and I need to, eat nothing, and I need to push when I'm fully tired. But as you said, you need to build up this confidence and go, I know this doesn't work for me.
Exactly.
And I'm going to show you right now. But it takes time, and hopefully it hasn't crushed you before that moment.
Yeah, it does take time. But I think once you can realize it, it's really empowering. Like knowing that you're making your own decision, and that if you succeed, it's because you've made these decisions. And if you fail, it's like, oh yeah, well, maybe it's also on me, but like what did I learn through that? And I think I don't know, it makes the journey more fun, I think, knowing that you've made your own, that you've made it your own, that it was your choice. Like choosing to go do a training is much more empowering, and you're going to do much better, I think, than someone telling you to go do it. So I think there's like, it's a fine line, a fine difference, but it has a huge impact. And then how am I passing it along? Well, I don't really know. Like, I think if someone asks a question, I'll share what I've learned or share my opinion, but I don't want to tell anyone, you should do this or you should do that, because ultimately I don't know. And ultimately I'm not them, so like I can't make the decision. And I think it does need to come from yourself, like what you're willing to try. And I'll say that, like when I first tried, this thing of like, I worked with professionals to like get back into trying to have my period and trying to learn. Like I worked with people at Orico, it's called, and they were great. But initially, I mean, it was kind of a disaster. Like I got so into it, like eating all this and that and like being on top of it. I ended up gaining 15 pounds. And then I was like, okay, well, maybe that's like, maybe I overdid it. You know, like there was definitely a time that was like,
nice.
This sucks. But
you almost need to go to that limit, don't you? And
well,
go, okay,
I think
now
so.
I can dial it back.
Yeah, exactly. Then I learned like, okay, well, this maybe is a bit too much for me, but like I get the same effect, like the same benefits if I just like adjust it to my own self and my own training and my own body, like, and then I can have the same benefits, but I also can keep like a reasonable weight, you know? And so I think it's just a learning process and it takes time. So if like someone has to be willing to do it for themselves and just be wanting to learn, I think, and I don't know how I can pass it along other than sharing what I've learned or sharing my story, but then I don't feel that I know enough to give advice, you know?
Well, let's talk about what you're going on to now. And you mentioned at the start of the podcast that you've just come back from injury and a pretty pinnacle part of your career at the moment. You're heading across the World Championships and doing a pretty exciting trip. But this sort of comes off what you just said before. I thought it was quite interesting, just having that confidence and knowing that what you want to do that makes you happy and making it work into your career, I guess, or to your lifestyle. Tell me a little bit about the World Championships now and what you're doing going across the worlds this year.
Yeah, so the Worlds are in Scotland this year, and I had never been there, but I think it looks cool. And, you know, normally, like, I'll go to World Championships and I want to fight for the rainbow jersey. Like normally I want to try and win. But this year, I mean, I had 3 herniated discs that I had to take care of. So I just did that. And so I'm not super fit right now. I'm okay, but like not that great. So I know I won't be going there to fight for the win. And, you know, I haven't qualified for the cross country race because I've done nothing. So, but I was able to go for the marathon cross country and the e-bike.
I love the marathon. Like it's sort of like, you can just do that. You can't do the cross country, but you can do 100K.
Well, yeah, and it's going to be tough too. Like I kind of agree with you. I agree with you, but whatever. It's not as maybe there's not as many people that want to do it, so it's easier to just like qualify for it. So yeah, I'm doing these 2 races, but I thought, okay, like I mean, we're not going to win, so might as well make the most out of this trip, and so we're bike packing. So we're flying from Montreal to Dublin in Ireland and bike packing for 4 days to get to the start of the race and then racing the marathon. So I think it's
you
gonna
and
be
your
fun.
husband.
Yeah, me and my husband, and turns out 2 of our friends are also joining. But yeah, me and my husband. And you know, I think that's, you know, you were talking about how the sport evolved and women's sports and all that. Like that's a cool evolution of the sport too. Like there's value for these things right now, you know, if you want to talk about adventure and stuff, and I think it's one of the cool things. Like, yes, I still want to perform, but it doesn't mean that I can't go and adventure. And, you know, my sponsors are happy about this, but there's also going to be happy if I perform. Like there's so many things that you can do. And if you're just, for me, like opening my world to see like, oh my God, there's all these other things that I love about cycling and I always have said no to because I thought they were not, you know, compatible with performing. But depending the time of the year, I think it can all, you know, blend together and one can help each other and vice versa. So yeah, for me, like I'm so excited about that.
Are you taking all your stuff on the bike? Like you are doing bike packing, like you go to the World Championships with all your stuff on your bike. That's it.
Well, yes and no. Like yes, but I shipped some tires and a hydration vest. Just like
that's it.
Well, yeah, very little. I shipped some bottles, like extra bottles, because in cross country, like I might need to change bottles. So I ship bottles, hydration vest, extra tires, and a pair of jeans in case it's cold. But that's it. Yeah, pretty much. That's
brilliant. That is so great. When I heard about this, I thought it was a great idea. Because like you said, the evolution of it, if you did this sort of 10 years ago, people would have just gone, have you heard about this madman? Yeah. She's riding to the thing. And you would have got, you know, ridiculed. No wonder she's not going to perform. But, you know, we understand now that it isn't a hindrance. And I think that's what you were just saying before, is being comfortable in what you know works for you. And I think wholeheartedly knowing this is going to make you happy whether it's going out for ice cream, whether it's bike packing to the World Championships, because of where you're at. That's what's going to make you really happy. Lastly, just before we go, I want to talk about the cross season coming.
Yeah. Can I just add one thing to just what you just said, though? I mean, I think you're right. Like, it's cool that there's this opening now, but I think for me, ultimately, it's like, I mean, I'm 30 now. Who knows how long I'll be doing this? Hopefully still for a few
10 more years.
I don't know, but it's just, I think the question is always, and I think maybe that's a recurring theme in like the conversation we had. It's like, ultimately, what do you want out of this sport, and out of this career? And for me, I guess like I want to see what's the best of me. Like that's the main thing. But also I want to finish this and say like, oh my God, like what a great time I had, and how all these experience. And this to me fits into kind of that objective where when else in my life am I going to go bike pack through Ireland and Scotland? Like right now it's kind of my job. It's part of my job. Like this fits into my job, but also like it will bring so many good memories and experience that I think when I finish my career, like, yes, I think that will mean a lot. And yes, like the titles and the wins are cool, but also, yeah, there's other things. Like for me, it's very multi-dimensional. It's really not just about winning. And I think this kind of fits into this. And I still want to win, but I don't know if that makes sense.
It totally does. I think, and like it's got to be that balance. I think exactly where you're at the moment. That's why I wanted to talk about the cross, because I think the balance then will swing the other way.
Yeah.
You want to go to the cross season, and that's going to be considering what your season is. Look, I'm only imagining what it would be, because if I was in your shoes, this is how it'd be. This is a building phase for me. I am going to take it serious when I'm there racing, but I need to put it in perspective for the whole season. And I'm going to have to turn the screw later around Christmas time when I'm doing these cross races, and I'm going to be fully fit, and that'll be my time to be on the other side of the scale. And that's what I wanted to ask you. Maybe I'm completely wrong, but tell me about the cross season before we go. What are you thinking about that with this sort of trajectory towards that?
I mean, you're like 100% on it. Like, this is what I want. Like, I think I'm 30 years old now, and, I've had, a few podium in the World Cups, and I want to see if I can have more, Like, I want to see, I'm still hungry for that, and I still want to do well. And yes, like honestly, when I come back from this trip to Scotland, we're kind of turning the screw a little bit and like being more focused in our preparation, because it will be like the 2 months before the start of the season. And I'm also excited for that, like equally as excited, because I think it's a fun mindset to be in when you're kind of focused on a goal and just like making every decision towards this goal. I love that. And I love the feeling of being the night before a race you've prepared for and just feel like let's just go. Like, I'm so ready. I've done everything. And I love, knowing that. So for me, that's equally as exciting. But I do need that balance. Maybe when I was younger, I didn't need it. But right now where I'm at, I need it. And I noticed that I'm not able to be that focused, like fully focused, tunnel vision for performance. I'm not able to do it all year long anymore. But I still have these pockets of like few months in a row where I can do it really well. But I do need that kind of balance the rest of the year. So I think it does make me more focused though when it's time. Like, I'm really into it. I'm looking forward to it. So it helps me. But yeah, there's definitely that balance. So yeah, looking forward to cross. I think it's going to be a fun season.
Well, there's lots for people to take out of this, especially young athletes, I think, because as you said, you can learn a lot once you look back on your career. And I think if people listening to this who are younger and they want to get that bit more of a balance. But I love how honest you've been in the podcast too, Maghalie. Thank you very much for being on the pod. I can't believe where that hour's gone. We could just keep talking like this for ages. Well,
thank you. It was so nice meeting you. Thanks for having me, and thanks for all your good question. It was fun.
Thank you. Well, guys, I hope you enjoyed that episode with Maghalie. She was really fun to chat with, and always great chatting with a fellow podcast host, because they sort of get the game. They've got a good microphone and they understand how to connect the Zoom call and all that sort of stuff, which probably everyone does know how to do, and I'm the only one who doesn't get it these days. But I really did enjoy talking to her about a whole range of different topics and some interesting things, and I love how open and honest she was too. I wish her best luck at the World Championships, but I think this cross season is going to be awesome to watch. She's had that break in the middle of the season. I think she's going to be firing this winter. A big thanks goes out to our major partner in the podcast, Rapha, Will Jones, who puts the episodes together, and the Life in the Peloton team behind the scenes, Meg and Spurlo. Guys, for you listening as well, thanks a lot. Love your feedback, so keep sending it in. And next week, we have a talking look for you. It is the history of the Tour de France quiz with the riders at the tour in the buses. So guys, until then, cheers. The music in this episode was composed by Pete Shelley. Cheers, mate.